Welcome to the show, my love. How are you?
Hey, I am so good and so excited to chat to you.
And we're tuning in from other sides of the globe right now. I think it's
Yes.
evening for you, very early morning for me.
Yeah, Perth in Australia. So I know that that's where you're from originally.
Yeah, I'm coming back in like a month and a half, actually. So maybe
So
we'll
excited.
connect in real life.
Yes, that would be amazing. When was the last time you were here?
Oh my goodness, like 3 years ago or something like that. Crazy because of, the
Yeah.
pandemic and the strictness, particularly in Perth and Western Australia. It was
Yeah.
like a prison state. No one was getting in. But I think they're going to let me in now, which is good because my dad's getting married. So I want to
That's
be
so
there,
exciting.
obviously.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it will be good because it will be starting to get cold here in Spain. And then it will be getting
Oh, yeah.
warm in November in Perth and hot. And so I can keep that
Yeah.
suntan going all year, hopefully.
Oh, good timing then.
Yeah. Well, I'm so excited for us to chat because we were saying when I came on your podcast recently, we're both projectors and we were just like, we need to create an episode for projectors. I know that you get a ton of questions from projectors and you are one. I get a ton of questions from projectors. And so I think it's going to be really great that we can like have this conversation specific to our projector listeners and
Yes.
teaching them how to exist in this world that we don't really fit into.
Yeah, I know. When I found out I was a projector, I was like, oh my gosh, my life makes sense.
Me too. Me too. I think one of the biggest things that I have often felt in my life, even though logically, mentally, I'm like, I don't think that's true, but it's more of like a belief that I had was that I was lazy. And I know that this is really like a big thing for projectors and a bit of a liberation, I think, when they find out their human design, like, oh no, I'm not lazy. I'm just not meant to work like a dog all day, like this many hours in this way. I don't know, did you have a similar realization, or what was your breakthrough
Yeah,
experience?
my breakthrough was that I'm not meant to give people advice all the time. So I used to be just like at Pilates and I was like, gosh, I just really have the urge to tell them how they could improve their business. And I used to actually go up and tell people, and then I would be met with this like, who the hell are you kind of vibe. And when I learned that, I was like, oh my gosh, it makes so much sense that I have this deep wisdom, but I'm not just meant to go and share it with literally anyone and everyone. And they're like, who the hell are you?
Yeah, totally. I mean, lots of people don't really like unsolicited advice, right? But I think when you're a projector and you can just see things so clearly, you're like, well, it's good advice. Why don't you want it?
Yeah. Yeah, that was a huge one for me. I never really felt the lazy side of it. I don't know what type you are, but I'm an energy projector. There's like different types of projectors as well. So
Yeah.
like I have these huge bursts of energy and we can do so many things, but it's not really like, we're not really meant to still. We still need to like have those big, deep times of rest. So when I learned that as well, it's almost like gives us permission to take extra time and make extra space as well.
Yeah, totally. Well, I'm not an energy projector. I'm a mental projector. So
Oh,
the top of my head, the crown, and the Anya, the third eye, are defined, but the rest of me is open,
yeah.
which was like a really interesting thing to figure out. But why don't we talk about like what are the different kinds of projectors? Because actually, like, I know some of the names of them, but not like the deeper the deeper intricacies of how these different kinds of projectors work. Because obviously, like, you just look at your own thing, right? Like, you
Yeah.
look at your own horoscope, you look at your own chart. And recently I had a retreat here in Mallorca, and we had a bunch of projectors who were on the retreat, and we were
Cool.
around the pool talking about it, and they were like, so what's the difference between the energy projector and this projector and this thing? And I was like, you know what, I actually don't know. Like, that much about energy projectors and like what are the differences between them?
Yeah, so there's two different categories. So mental and splenic. So I'm splenic, you're mental, and all of those are more like the authorities, so how we make decisions. And there are quite a lot of unique ones to projectors, or, you know, generator manifesting generators. They won't have certain ones that we have. But then there's also the energy projector versus like a classic projector. So for me, I have my root defined. So if you have any of the motor centers defined, so that would be the ego, the emotional center, the root, or we don't have sacral, so it wouldn't be the sacral, but any of the motor centers defined, we have a bit more energy. So energy projectors almost verge on the side of being a manifester sometimes. We don't have the defined throat, but it means that we have like bursts of energy. We can like go, 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 and then we rest, and then we go, 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 and then we rest. Whereas classic projectors don't have that boost of energy as much. So that's where like a lot of the laziness shadows come in with more classic projectors as well. So there's that difference. But yeah, I mean, the difference in mental projector, splenic, emotional, all of these things are more so how we make decisions. So that's coming from the authority. Mine's splenic. So I get these like intuitive hits. And if I don't do the thing at the time, it's gone. Like I can't be like, wait, what was that again? Can you just like tell me? It's gone. And then yours being mental, you know, you've got to kind of soundboard it off people or help make you a decision. Or there's the emotional ones. So a lot of my clients are actually emotional projectors. And so emotional authority is actually the #1 authority in the world around how do I feel about this? What do my emotions say? Am I excited? Am I not excited? And then we make a decision from that. But you and I, if we don't have our emotional center defined, that doesn't even make sense to be like, well, how do I feel about this? And make decisions from that place if we don't have the definition.
Yeah. So with an emotional projector, the thing that I know about emotional projectors or anyone who has that emotional inner authority is like they have these waves, and from what I've heard, it's like you got to ride that wave and not make the impulsive decision in like the peak of the moment. And I think for a lot of people who, at least the ones I've spoken to, who found that out about themselves, they were like, oh, okay, cool, yeah, I like have all of these emotional waves, and like when I've made a decision in the middle of like my bitchy moment, it hasn't worked out as like optimally for me as I'd hoped. So what does that look like? Like, say someone's listening, they want to make a decision about something and they're feeling all these emotions, like what's a process? What do they do? How do they know like how, when they've ridden the wave, you know?
Yeah, so everyone's is going to be different, and depending on actually the gates that they have defined in that emotional center, there's different types of waves.
Yeah. So wait, those are the little numbers that are circled on the emotional center, right?
Yeah. So
it's like a rabbit hole.
I know it goes so deep and can be so specific in like one area, but depending on those, there's different types of waves and they look different. Some go up and they go down. And the down parts are not necessarily negative and the up is positive. The down is like, I don't feel anything. And then the up is like, holy shit, I feel everything, good and bad. Whereas other ones just go plateaued and then up and then plateau and up. So depending on whatever your emotional wave is, you can kind of check that out. But really, I think the biggest piece of advice around that is like journal about your emotions and make the decision from a place of emotional clarity. So it's no heightened emotion, no like, I don't feel anything, but I'm going to make a decision anyway. And sometimes it can take days to really feel into that, which I'm on the other end of the spectrum. Splenic is like now or never, you know, like if you didn't do it yesterday, too bad kind of instinct. And then I have my root defined as well. So the square right down the bottom, which is like adrenaline, all of this fast pace. I'm like, holy shit, let's go, strap in. And I'd never really understood my partner's emotional. And I've never really understood. I'm like, just make a damn decision, let's go. But when I learned that, it allowed me to like give them the space to make that decision as well.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. So say someone had that emotional projector like way of being and they were journaling out their emotions, would they then look for like patterns in those waves? So like say they were having this feeling of like, oh, I really feel like I need to move house or move overseas or something, and they just like kept having that come up in their journal. Would that be like, oh, that feels like some clarity there because I'm continuously like bumping into that thing, or I'm continuously writing that out and feeling that?
Yeah, to be honest, it's hard for me to say because I'm not emotional, so I haven't experienced it. But all I know is that it's like this moment of like, I feel clear on it and I'm not making a decision from super impulsive, excited energy and not super angry energy, or negative emotion, but it's like this middle ground. So that's kind of the best explanation I can give when I haven't kind of lived it. And it's, that's the interesting part about human design and why I personally have loved learning from projectors as well, because I've had readings in the past and things like that from people who weren't projectors. And although I got the information, there was still like an inner sense of knowing that was missing. So that's where I became really, really passionate about sharing my knowledge and wisdom as a projector as a whole, and building out that for my audience as well.
Yeah, totally. I don't have an inner authority being a mental projector. It's kind of like the environment is the inner authority. And it's so weird. Like, I don't know. I still don't know if this is just like a high maintenance aspect of my personality or whether it's actually to do with that inner authority. But for me, my environment has to be this very specific way for me to literally get anything done. So recently, at the start of August, I had to move out of my house in Spain. And then I was like moving into the next house, which was funnily like literally up the street. But there was a month where like I couldn't move into the next house. And so I thought, it's only a month. I'll go stay in my friend's apartment, which is like way smaller than what I'm used to. I got 2 dogs. The air conditioner wasn't working. And for me, I could not function like working from this tiny little room with my husband in the next room working. Like, even though I couldn't really hear him, my brain was just like, no, like we can't work here. Like, I need a big room. I need a big desk. I need it to be like uncluttered, my space, no one else around, in order for my brain and my creativity to be on. Like, literally, I was like, I can't do anything.
Yeah. And I think that's definitely a part of it, but also like with projectors, I mean, I do have some clients with quite a lot of defined parts in their chart, but most of us have pretty open charts. And I know that I need a ton of alone time, even when like we live in quite a big house here in Perth, like 4 bedrooms, like I've got my own study. And even when my partner's at home, nowhere near me in the house, but it's like we pick up on all this energy. And
Oh my God, yeah, I so resonate with that.
I need so much alone time. I'm like, I can feel your energy, we're near me, but I can feel it and it's like distracting me. So
yeah, last night everyone left, but for the last few days, my husband's like staff from his company all came and stayed, and we have a really big house, so lots of people couldn't stay. So their whole team was here and they were nowhere near me. I couldn't hear them, but I was just like I was happy they were here and I was like stoked for them. But at the same time, it was also like, when they leave, it's going to be so like peaceful for me, even though they're like literally not disturbing me at all. Like you said, I can just like feel the energy in the house. Yeah.
Yeah. And sometimes we can feel like a bit of a bitch. I'm like, can you just go away? You know,
Oh my
like,
God, I so get
like,
that.
you know, it's like oh, you're so antisocial. Why are you always by yourself? And it's like, I love being by myself, you know.
Yeah.
And I can recharge. And it doesn't mean I don't love people in my life, but we need it to like just decondition from the day.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm like that. It's like I'm very extroverted and I like to socialize, but to be honest, I spend a lot of time alone. Um, and it works well because my husband's very busy with his business. So it's like I get that alone time and I'm like, yes, yes. I just want to like lay on the bed by myself and like look
Yeah.
at something on my phone or like go for a walk. So I so get that. I feel like that's a really big permission slip as well. When you find out you're a projector, you're like, no, this isn't me just being mean. I'm recharging my batteries right now.
And to be honest, I don't normally share this because people think it's weird, but sometimes I have to sleep in my own bed. And that's a big thing for projectors, like sleeping, especially if you're with like a generator or someone with that like intense energy all the time, even though you're asleep, it's like they're a vacuum for the energy. And when I sleep by myself, I wake up and I feel like ready, rejuvenated. When I sleep in the bed with my partner, I feel like I'm hungover, or I'm like, why am I still so tired after I've had like 10 hours of sleep? And so, you know, if I went and just like said that to any random person in society, they'd be like, oh, they have some relationship issues, or, you know, like judgment would be passed. But I'm like, we're asleep. And then the rest of the time we can, you know, spend some really nice quality time together. And it's not every day, but I know that I need that for my energy as well.
Yeah. I think when people judge that, because it's weird, I think a lot of people probably sleep in separate beds. But I guess the assumption is like, oh, well, you guys aren't having sex, you know, but it's just like, well, you can have sex whenever you want and then you can go to
Yeah.
sleep, you know, like
I'm not
I
doing
think
the
a
whole
lot of
lot of
people
sleep
do
while
that.
you know.
Yeah. It's so interesting whenever people ask me like, oh, what are you and what's your husband? My husband's a manifesting generator. He has a sacral authority, which I laugh and say that he's got like powerful like dick. I do sleep in the same bed as him, but he always wants to like fall asleep cuddling and me, you know, in the nook. And I literally start waking up when I'm laying there. So he's falling asleep, like watching the movie or whatever. And I'm like sitting there getting more and more stimulated because I'm like, I'm getting your energy. And then I'm watching like some crazy crime show, which is waking me up. And so I'm like, I'll be cuddling him. And then I'm like, okay, get off me now. And I'm like, you mustn't touch a single part of my body while I'm going to sleep. Because I just want to be in my own space when I go to sleep.
Yeah. No, that's such an interesting, point of view on that.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think one of the really interesting parts of human design that I've personally benefited from, and I'm always really curious, like with my clients or with friends, like, oh, what's yours, is the profile numbers. So you're 1-3, I'm a 3-5. So we have that 3 in common. And I actually have a lot of people that I know who have that 3 line, whether they're, you know, the 3-5 or the 1-3. And I think for
kind
me,
of like that wild spirit energy, isn't it?
Yeah. So I thought we could talk about the 3 line because I'm sure we'll have listeners who have the 3 line who want to know more about it. So I would love to get your thoughts on it, but like my initial thoughts on having the 3 line and what it's helped me to do more efficiently is to really embrace failure and to embrace like just giving things a go, taking risks, experimenting, and truthfully to become more confident no matter what happens. Because I almost just see everything now as like, oh, this is a bit of an experiment and I'm the one leading the experiment, and if it works then great, I'll tell everyone like, hey guys, this is what we do. But if it doesn't, then it's fine. It's like, okay, that's just like a failed experiment and we'll try something else.
Yeah, so yours is obviously conscious, so that's more like how you see yourself, whereas mine's like the 1 and then the 3 is more unconscious, so people probably see me more in that way. But I personally, and I also have my defined roots, so I have like quite a big threshold for like adrenaline and all these things, but my line 3 has kind of just been part of me for my whole life. Around, I don't really understand what people mean about failure. Like, I just don't grasp the concept. It's never made sense to me. Like, no, it wasn't failing, like it's just shifting or moving, and that's pretty cool, because when I work with my clients, I can kind of coach them through that, or, shift their energy out of that failure mindset around just taking the learnings and then moving on. So my conscious line, being line 1, is like the investigator. I need to know all of the information about everything, which is cool, because then it's like, cool, I know a lot of things, but then I've also trialed and errored them, tested it out, and how that's kind of shown up in my journey. I've had 5 businesses in the last 7 years, and grown and scaled them and created huge success with them. But I also realized when it was time to close them down or sell them or exit, and was like, cool, I learned what I learned, but now I'm on to the next part.
Yeah, that makes total sense. And just to clarify, if anyone listening, like the first number, as Jess said, is like the conscious self. So it's, you're more like aware of that and maybe somewhat identified with that. And then the second number is, more like how other people see you and project you. Mine's a 5. So like, that just makes so much sense to me. I'm a walking trigger for a lot of people. I know you're not supposed to say that word anymore, but like, that's the best way to explain it. Or a walking projection field, as it's sometimes referred to. But it's also that energy of like, save the day, the heretic. And so I get that so much, where people like love me or hate me, or then love me then hate me, put me on the pedestal, then go, we're gonna take this bitch down. That's really helped with my sister wound, actually, to know that it's like, no matter what I do, and no matter how much of a good person that I am and that I continue to try to be, that like is irrelevant, because people are going to project me through their own like lens of seeing the world. And so it as soon as something for me becomes inevitable, it's like gravity, right? Like, yes, I would enjoy flying in the sky and flying to have a coffee with someone, and like being able to jump out of a plane and just, cruising down. But it's not possible. So it's like, I'm not upset about gravity. It exists. So like, how do I just work with that? Like, I'm going to do cool things, like go on a trampoline instead. But I think like it's that liberation, isn't it? When you realize with human design, oh, this is just part of me. I can't stop it. It's part of the design. So how do I just work with that in a positive way?
Yeah. And I think I love that you brought up the topic of being like a walking projection field in a way, because like that's going to show up hugely in your profile numbers, but especially as projectors as well, because we were literally born to be successful, and success doesn't make logical sense from our point of view. We get to rest, have fun, and success gets to happen. And like, that is quite triggering in a way to
people don't like that, do they?
Because they're like, well, I'm over here working my ass off. What do you mean you're just at the beach all the time, Jess? Or like, you're creating this huge success regardless of whatever you set out to do. And that's been a big thing that I've had to own around, firstly, like being potent with the point of view that we have, and like that our energy is going to be quite polarizing in a way, but then also owning the parts where people are going to be offended by the ease and the success that we get to create in a way.
Yeah, it's so funny, right? Because in my mind, when I say things or I walk around, like internally in my own brain and body, I'm like, I don't think I'm being triggering. Like there are some people who I think actually they act polarizing on purpose.
Yeah.
Like I have a friend who's like this wild, loud Sagittarius, and sometimes she says things and I'm like, oh my God, like you know that saying it like that is going to piss people off, and like she likes it, you know, she's like, all press is good press, baby.
Yeah.
She likes that, like being a bit antagonistic. For me, I'm never trying to be antagonistic. Like inside my heart, I'm like, I'm a sensitive little being, and I'm like, I want you to love me. I want to love you, and I really want to help you. But it's just so interesting to me, the things that people have been challenged by with my advice, or even just my presence, like me just walking in a room and breathing sometimes annoys people. I'm like, oh, sorry guys, like I can't help that I'm sexy.
Yeah. Something that my clients sometimes say to me is, Jess, I feel like you're just giving me a loving bitch slap. Like all this we come in with so much love and we can see how it can really help people, but we do have that penetrating aura that's like, here it is, you know, whether you like it or not, here's the truth that we can see. And some people are ready for that and some people are not. And that's where we get to revert back to, you know, the invitation and following that strategy. But I think it's quite fun. Like I like playing with that energy and just getting to share in a really deep way in the spaces where people have invited us.
Yeah, totally. Keyword being invited. I think it's like, here's what I imagine. Maybe it's what it's like for someone who, you know, is in the presence of a projector and they're maybe not like as, you know, far on their self-awareness journey. I imagine it's like walking in a room. This is like a bad dream, walking in a room and there's like one person who knows that you're naked and they can see that you're naked and no one else is noticing, but this one person, like they see you
and they're like nice. And you're like, oh.
And it's, I think people can sense that like I can see them. Even some of my friends have laughed at me multiple times when we'll be at a restaurant or something and they're saying something and I just really like give people eye contact when they're speaking to me. And I'm like truly listening and like digesting what that person is saying. And people have made jokes before of like, Amy, like, why do you look so serious? Like, oh my God, you're like staring at me. And I'm like, I'm listening to you, you know, like I'm really listening to you right now. Like I love you and I care about what you're saying. And it's just like so funny, the discomfort that can come up from people. Like I'm blinking and stuff. I'm not like trying to hypnotize you or anything, but it's just so funny. Like something that just feels like such a natural way of being for me creates all these different responses in other people.
Something that I realized as I was sort of like moving through my business journey or like building an online presence was that like I didn't actually realize that I was like trying to water myself down so much online around, you know, in my real life, my family are like, oh, Jess, that's pretty potent, but we'll take her, you know, and we'll get to share these things. But then I was like, why am I not doing that online? Like I was almost afraid of this rejection. And because we want that recognition in a way, we've obviously got to recognize ourselves. But as projectors, we feel successful when we have a recognition. It's almost like, and I think a lot of projectors might feel this, but we want to be liked in a way, or it's like, oh, let me make myself more palatable for the online community so that they don't get too offended by what I have to say. And so that was a huge shift for me. And like when I shifted that, and I know that you share it so beautifully, but when I shifted that, like success just dropped in and I was like, whoa, where did this come from? Or where did all these clients or DMs come from? So that was like another one of my huge shifts when I realized I was a projector.
Yeah, totally. I've gone through different seasons of this, of like being very bold and authentic and very like carefree about that. And truthfully, this year, I've been really like bumping up against so many things that I have not felt, experienced, or struggled with for years, like literally years. And it's been really interesting to watch that. And one of the other things that I've done, which I haven't actually shared publicly, is late last year, I started reevaluating lots of stuff in my business, like looking at how I can make my business more ethical, and looking at like maybe things that I'd done or I taught that aren't necessarily like harmful, but maybe like weren't fully in alignment with like the ethics that I have in my heart and that I want for this industry. And so something that I did was like, I made this commitment, and I knew I can launch or relaunch any of my programs. They're very popular. People are like waiting for them and asking for them. But I was like, I'm not going to launch anything until I feel fully clear and like coherent in this, and really proud of what I'm like restoring or recreating or putting out in the world. And part of that meant like, I know that my revenue is going to go massively down. And then I decided that that was also the experiment. I was like, I'm going to sit here and like not have that constant dopamine high of success and money coming in. And I just want to notice like what happens to my self-worth in these moments. And honestly, it's just been like the most interesting thing, and all the things that have come up. And I haven't shared that, like I said, yet, because I just like, I don't know, I didn't want to be like, oh, look at me, I'm so righteous. And like, you know, but that's what's been happening for me. It's been really interesting to find that balance between like, obviously success for a projector is a sign of alignment. And so money and metrics in your business can be healthy in a way, but I feel like I've just been disentangling like where it's healthy and where it's just been me almost like buffing myself up through the attention and like the recognition of other people. And like, where am I not recognizing myself?
Yeah, I think that is the perfect point. Like we do, you know, it's nice to have that recognition from others, but people actually can't recognize us, especially as projectors, until we recognize ourselves. And I love that you shared that, the different times of your life, because I think what that looks like to us in terms of how we want to recognize ourselves gets to change as well.
Yeah, totally. It's been interesting. I felt very apologetic about my bigness this year, which is hilarious because like the main word of my brand is being unapologetic, right? But and I have a mastermind called Unapologetic. And one of my gorgeous clients in the mastermind, who's like so funny, she was like, be careful what you name your programs, babe, because you usually get like, you know, more deeply awakened to the threat of that, or you know, you get sort of pulled deeper into that.
Challenges, right? I've noticed that as well when I've been launching things recently, and I'm like, oh shit, why is this coming up now when I'm trying to launch something about this?
Yeah,
always happens.
Yeah, totally. There was like one question I really wanted to ask because I get asked it all the time, and then I've forgotten it, but hopefully it's going to come back to me.
Yeah.
Does that always happen as a projector? You like, if you don't like say the thing, then you're like, oh fuck, it's gone, you know?
Yeah, I don't know. Just human beings.
You're like, no, that's just you being forgetful, babe.
I forgot things earlier, so we're on the same page.
Yeah. Let's talk about waiting for the invitation. I think this is the thing that really creates a lot of like confusion for projectors. You know, where they get confused of like, am I waiting for the invitation or am I playing small? Am I allowed to ask anyone for anything ever? You know, and I think like it's a nuanced conversation, right? But maybe you could share some like real life or real world examples of what waiting for the invitation actually looks like.
Yeah, so I just want to like differentiate a minute, because waiting for the invitation for projectors and then waiting to respond for like generators, manifesting generators, people sometimes get confused with the two. And like waiting to respond is like someone just posting a question up on their own stories and you're like, hey, I noticed you post that, I'm responding to it. Whereas if we see someone post something up on their story, it's not an invitation for us. It's not like, dear Jess, I would love to invite you for your opinion, please. So it's really inviting us to just be like, hey, I noticed you posted this on your story. Here's what I think about it. We're going to be met with like a bit of resistance. So I think when it comes to waiting for the invitation, something that I even play with, like my clients have paid me to give them my opinion. But even some topics, I will still say, hey, I can see this. Would you like me to share? When I know that it's maybe a bit of a new territory or a new topic, or maybe potentially even something that a depth that we haven't gotten to yet. So I always just like to touch that, because then they're going to receive it deeper. It's going to create a bigger transformation. And then we also don't get met with this, like, what are you telling me this for? So that's something that I've played with, and everyone has different definitions for this. Some people are like, oh, sometimes you can feel the energetic invitation, so that's good enough. But it's like, it depends on who the other person is. It depends on you. And I feel like we know, like projectors, we know on the deeper level, we have such a deep awareness of just what's going on around us, the people, the energy that we pick up. And so it's almost just playing with that and feeling like maybe where the threshold is at for you. Like for me, definitely not. If I'm just at a Pilates class, I don't go and tell the Pilates store owner, like,
not anymore.
That's not the vibe. Unless they're like, hey, Jess, I noticed your Instagram, you're a business coach, would love to pick your brain or get some advice, then that's probably an invitation. So yeah, I play with it. You can even kind of, firstly, you don't have to wait for the invitation to post on your own social media, to like share on your own podcast, like to share your things, because then people almost invite themselves into your world. If they're not here for it, they can unfollow you, which I'm probably sure both of us have a lot of people unfollowing us all of the time. And like,
hundreds a week. I'm like, even sometimes I'm like, I don't even know what I did. Like, I felt like I was quite behaved this week, but
nothing.
Whatevs.
But yeah. So yeah, I think that's the big thing. Like when people, like when I have clients come to me who are projectors, they're like, oh, I'm a projector. Life sucks.
Oh, no.
Because they've been taught, well, just sit back and wait. You can't have ambitions because you're not allowed to go out and do anything. You're lazy, like you get told all these things. I'm like, guess what? You get to just post whatever the hell you want to post. And the right people are just magnetized to your energy. You get to go and relax and just have fun and be like your most magnetic self. And people drop into your world. So it's like we actually have this incredible superpower, but we have to first realize how the old way or the usual way of working isn't really for us.
Yeah. My unpopular opinion, but I feel like I mean, I'd say it anyway, but I feel like I can say it here because it's probably all projectors listening. I think that projector is the best human design.
Oh, me too.
That's my very biased opinion.
I think with this audience, we're right. Because I'm like, I go and tell everyone, projectors, we're born to be successful. Like, oh no, you're just born to have peace. You're born to have happiness, which like is totally amazing for those types. And I'm like, success lights me up, like with whatever that means. It does, like you said, it doesn't have to mean dollars in the bank, but just like feeling successful is, we're literally born, it's our birthright. So when we can unleash that power, I think it's the best one as well.
Yeah, I think it's also like on that waiting for the invitation piece. That's why I love like having a podcast and having an Instagram presence, because it's a way for me to share all of the wisdom and the knowledge and things that I want to say without like intruding on people, because people are like consenting to be in that space. And if they don't like it, and like you said, they can leave. The other thing I was thinking about when we were talking about this is like, I kind of always felt like I was not a shit friend, but like in a specific area, I was like, oh, I'm not very good in terms of that, where I'm like not the kind of person who's like, okay, guys, we're going to this restaurant, then we're going to get a bus to this place. I've organized this day. I get invited to that by like all my other friends who are like generators or manifesting generators. And I'm so grateful. Also being a Taurus moon, I'm like a little bit like lazy with like, you know, doing all the specific detailed things. And so I'm always like, yes, like we're going to the restaurant and the winery, and like, you know, my friend organized it all. I'm so excited. I'll be there 100%. But it's so interesting how I just receive all these invitations from all my friends, and like it seems to work. You know, they like to organize things and invite me, and I love to come.
That's so good. I'm kind of the opposite, because I have the line 1. So I'm like, what time are we leaving? What is all the info? Like, what's the schedule? And if people aren't organizing it to my center, I'm like, right, I'm just going to organize it. So like line 1s will get this if they're listening. Because like, even when I'm watching a movie, I'm like, oh, I wonder how old that actor is. Better Google it, because I need to know everything about everything. So it's like a wild time to have that line 1. And it's like, I need to know the details.
Yeah, I do that as well, but that's just because I'm a nosy bitch. I'm like, I want to know like who the actor is married to. Are they as old as what they look like? What do they look like in real life? But that's nothing to do with me investigating. That's just me like wanting to know all the things. Yeah. So on that note of success, that's not just like a claim that either of us is making about projectors. That's literally the I forget the language for it, but it's like the sign that you're aligned, right?
Yeah.
The self theme, or
the signature.
Yeah. And then it's like the opposite of the not self theme, right? Or it's usually like sort of different to the not self.
If we're out of alignment, then we would feel that bitterness, really, which that made total sense to me as well. Because I was like, why are these people, like my friends, I was like, why aren't they inviting me like on their podcast? And then I would like invite myself, and then I would feel all this bitterness. And it's like, because I damn well invited myself, like they didn't invite me, or like, you know. So that's been really cool to play with that. And it's funny that we're talking about that now, because I actually haven't felt bitter in a long time since really aligning with this. But when I first learned about it, I was like, holy shit, bitterness rules my life.
Yeah. It's not a nice emotion, is it? It's
No.
like, especially like, I think projectors are usually very wise souls, you know? And so when you're a wise soul and then you're feeling bitter, like it's also healthy in a way, right? Because it brings you off your high horse for a sec. Or you're on your high horse feeling bitter, like I'm so good and no one's recognizing me. But it's like, feels like a very human emotion. And it's very easily identified, I think. Like when you feel bitter, it feels like your soul is sucking on a lemon. Like that's how I feel like it is.
Yeah. It's not a good feeling, is it? It's kind of like, it almost feels like a mix of jealousy and like anger and like all these things. It's like in a beautiful melting pot of bitterness.
Yeah. And I feel like often from bitterness, passive aggressiveness is one of those like byproducts in the external behavior. And like passive aggressiveness, I mean, that's a whole other conversation, but it's like, it's not fruitful either, is it? Because when you're like that, then of course people don't invite you anywhere, or like open up to you or ask you for your advice. So yeah, goodness me. So when you feel bitterness as a projector, like what do you do to get back into your signature, into alignment?
Yeah, so oftentimes bitterness will show up because we've invited ourselves where we weren't invited. So that was like the first part, was like realizing, oh shit, I didn't mean to, but I invited myself, and then I wasn't recognized, and then the bitterness happened. So, you know, just even taking those learnings and knowing that, okay, next time I know where that line is for me. But also it's really helpful for us because we are such wise souls and we have all this incredible wisdom. It's like immersing ourselves in our craft. Like, what is it that lights us up the most? Is it learning a certain topic? Is it reading? Is it going to the beach? And literally just, I call it, when I start to feel even just not necessarily bitterness, but even just a little bit meh about my business, I'm like, I'm going to have a magnetic Jess day, and I go to the beach and I like don't look at my phone, and I'm like, how can I just be my most magnetic self? And then when I'm not even promoting anything or selling anything, I literally get so many DMs when I'm doing that magnetic stuff of people just like, hey Jess, I need to work with you. Don't know why, but just need to. So that's really cool as a projector, because then it removes all expectation, and it's just like, we are freaking magical when we just be. Literally, that's all we have to do, is be, and be at our most magnetic self, really.
Yeah, I love that so much. I always find, like, for me, if I'm meh or I'm in a rut, or like any kind of bitterness is there, getting back into like the heart of my service. And so something like, even yesterday I did this free masterclass and we were talking about it before we hit record, and like after being in such a long funk and then also taking that step back, I realize now, like, okay, now I'm kind of hiding, I'm not retreating now, which in my gene key is like, I need to retreat to like get my wisdom. I was like, I'm not retreating anymore. Like, the retreats was over a long time ago. Like, now I need to actually make a move. And so instead of being like, oh, how can I just go like create something and make all this money? It was like, no, like, what's going to be such a generous gift to other people, put me in the flow. And I was just like, I have to do a free masterclass. People love it when I do them. They're always like so electric. And I got so much energy. Like, most people feel tired after big master classes. I'm like partying after. I'm like ready to go to Ibiza.
No, it's so good, because that's like a place where we get to share all of that wisdom. And honest, that is what gives us the energy to do things.
Yeah, totally. We're getting energy from everybody else. I wonder, do people feel tired around projectors then sometimes? Because like, I don't think we're like that vampiring it from other people, but we do like bounce off other people's energy, right? But I do wonder, like, if people get tired sometimes around projectors.
I don't think they necessarily get tired, but it's almost like an intellectual tiredness. I think if we're like giving them such depth all the time, that could be somewhat tiring.
Yeah. I recently met this woman who was a reflector, actually. And I thought, oh, cool. Because a mental projector is almost like a reflector, right? So I was like, maybe we're going to have loads of, synergy and resonate with each other. And within a few minutes of meeting her, I was like, I'm getting a headache. Wow. I ended up with this crazy headache. And I actually spoke to someone who also like knew this person, and she said this thing to me. She's like, oh, everyone got a headache last time we were with this person. I was like, so did I. And I was like, I don't know what mysterious things are going on here.
So
but
that's like obviously because you've got the head pressure, like you've got both your ajna and your head defined. That's like a super pressure zone. And then like she's reflecting that back to you. That's so interesting. I wonder if the other people had defined heads as well.
We were with another mental projector And then someone else whose designer didn't really know, but she was a projector as well, I think. I don't know which kind.
I have my head and ajna both open, completely open. So it would be like, I've never met a reflector actually, but I would be so intrigued to have that like reflected back.
Yeah, it's so weird because I meet lots of reflectors actually, and I've met so many mental projectors, and to me that seems kind of weird because it's like what, 2% of the mental projectors somehow find me, and then they don't know that I'm a mental projector because I'm not like banging on all the time about human design, but then I might like mention it in a Q&A or something, and they'll be like, oh my goodness, this is why I must have been drawn to you.
Yes.
One week I met 4 people who were mental projectors in a week. And I was like, this is bizarre, but really cool.
So I seem to attract like a lot of 1-3s, but also splenic projectors. And one lady, I actually ran like a whole projector mastermind a few months ago, and just as like a passion project. I don't want to be like the human design person, but I was like, I'm really passionate about this. I need to run it. And one lady joined up, and she was a splenic projector. And the reason why she joined up was because when I did a podcast once, totally unrelated, but I was like, oh my gosh, I just had this thought. So I had to get on my podcast straight away and record it for you guys, because otherwise I'd forget. She was like, oh, I resonated so much with that because that's how I work too. And it makes sense because we just have this hit and we have to go quickly. So it's these things that we don't even realize, that people just self-identify, with people who are like them. And it's really cool how they can, come into your world.
Yeah. I sometimes think it's also like, it can go either way. Like, for example, when people ask me like, what's your favorite star sign? My favorite star sign is Aries, even though I'm a Leo, because
That's me.
Amazing. I've never met an Aries that I didn't like immediately just be obsessed with. Like I love the energy of Aries, and I have so many Aries turns, but people think that's hilarious, right? Because I'm a Leo. So like everyone thinks that Leos fucking are obsessed with themselves, and like we probably are a lot of the time. But with Leo, I would get along with most Leos, but like sometimes I don't know, me and like other Leos, we might just rub up on each other the wrong way. And it's probably because they do something like similar to me, and it's like an unconscious thing. Like not competition or anything like that, but it's like something about them that annoys me is probably something that I'm annoyed about about myself,
Yeah, that's so interesting. I know a lot of Aries. I find that like a lot of, maybe it's just like my world, but a lot of like entrepreneurs tend to be Aries in a way. I don't know, very fiery, very bossy.
Aries is fiery. They really like are quite like confident, and like that energy of like, love me, hate me, don't really give a fuck. I have this theory that like in terms of the fire signs, I think the fire signs are the craziest ones in the zodiac. I think that like the most I don't give a fuck and like fiery is Sagittarius, then Aries, and then I think Leo. I think Leo acts like they don't give a fuck, but I think Leo actually is very sensitive, and sometimes that's more of a performance, whereas like the Aries people I know, I'm like, I really don't think that they give a fuck.
I actually don't know too much about all the other star signs. I know mine, and I'm like, I don't know much about the rest.
Yeah, I love astrology, and I mean it forms part of human design, and love all the things, gene keys, astrology, human design.
So good. We could probably talk all day on
Yes. Well, I'm gonna let you go. Thanks so much for the chat, love. Super interesting. Hope that our listeners loved it, got loads out of it. Where should they come find you?
So they can find me on my Instagram, Jess.Williamson8, and I actually have like a free projector masterclass where I kind of go into like a bit more of the signs and things like that. So that's on my website as well.
Amazing. The sequel. You can go continue your studies, projectors, so you can become the most successful badass projector that you can be. Thank you so much, Jess. It's been absolutely amazing to talk to you.
Thanks, Amy.
Thank you.